Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. Joining me today is Toni Minichello. Toni is a student athlete at Old Dominion University where she plays field hockey. Today, Toni and I are going to dive into her journey in field hockey, how she developed her skills from middle school, high school, and beyond, what her journey was like in college, how she was able to navigate the transfer portal successfully, what life is like for her now as a field hockey athlete at ODU, and so much more. Really appreciate Toni's time, and I really love the energy that she brings to this episode and to everything that she does in general that way. She is such a great person, and I really appreciate your time. Highly recommend checking her out on Instagram. You can find that in the description below if you haven't yet, and checking out ODU Field Hockey as well for all the amazing stuff that her and her teammates are up to. Episodes like this are made possible by ISOFIT. ISOFIT is the official sponsor for season 5 of the podcast. For more on ISOFIT, you can check the description below. Enjoy. Toni, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today. Thank you so much for being here. For people who might not be familiar with you and all the amazing stuff you're doing in the world of field hockey and obviously lately down at Old Dominion that way, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all that you do?
Yeah, so hi, my name's Toni Minichello. I'm from a little small town in Pennsylvania, kind of near the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area. I grew up there my entire life. I decided to play field hockey at like a really young age. I think I started in maybe like kindergarten, first grade at like these little kiddie camps that we had. And I fell in love with the sport, so I decided to continue on and play in college. And I decided my junior year of high school that I would be attending Villanova University. But after a year and a half being there, I decided that's not the place I was happy at. So I decided to hit the transfer portal, and now I'm at Old Dominion University in Virginia.
And it's been sunshine and rainbows and a lot of beach days ever since.
Oh, it's amazing. I love living 10 minutes away from the beach is honestly the best thing that could have happened in my life.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as someone who also grew up in the middle of nowhere, northeastern Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
we don't have a whole lot of beaches or sunshine, and we get a lot of snow in the winters. And I've noticed since I've moved south, I get no snow ever. I get a lot of sunshine, and it's just freaking beautiful. It's amazing what kind of effect that has on your overall like health and well-being and just mental status I've found too. And it's interesting to me because like I said, I also grew up in the 570 like you, and field hockey was not very common up there. Like
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't know any girl in my county that played field hockey.
Yeah. It's
So
great.
it's so crazy to me that you found your
Yeah.
way into this sport coming from a middle of nowhere small town where that's not really a thing.
Yeah, and it's crazy because yeah, like you're saying, like when I was younger, it really was not that popular. But I had this one girl, her name was Sarah Degnan. She was kind of like my big sister at these like mini camps. So she was, like many, many years older than me. And she kind of like took me under her wing at these like little camps. And she's the reason I really got into the sport. And like you said, it's not very popular at all. But now that I like look back and as I continue to like get older, the population of field hockey is absolutely insane where we're from, and it continues to grow every day. Like my club team, Electric Surge, it's in Kingston, Pennsylvania. We started, I remember, oh gosh, I had to be in like fourth grade or something starting it. And it's grown so much. They have like thousands of girls. I mean, if you look at their Instagram page, they have like thousands of followers. And like when I was in high school, like that was never really a thing. And it's just grown so popular, especially in northeastern Pennsylvania. There's a lot of recruitment happening too.
Yeah, I love to see the growth of the sport because it's really fun and exciting to watch. And I think that, everyone's probably been to a field hockey game before, or at least I went to one when I was in like middle school that way. And I noticed the whistle blew like every 2 seconds and I can never figure out why. But once you start watching some, really well-developed high school and college teams, like that doesn't happen as often. And it's a really fun, engaging sport to watch. And I mean, the sport's really, really big in other countries, both for men and women that way. And I haven't really seen it take off, for the men the same way in the States yet, but I'm hoping that happens soon. I guess I also got to ask you, also being from that similar area that way, do you feel like Old Forge has the best pizza in America, actually, or this is a very
Oh,
debated topic?
I have to disagree. I have to disagree. I think I like Old Forge pizza, but I think Angela's just takes it has to take the win.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you know Angelo's Pizza, right? You have to. Yeah, I think Angelo's Wilkes-Barre, 10 out of 10, best pizza I've ever had. I mean, actually, my mom, I have her not smuggle it, but I have her bring it down every time she comes down and she drives. I'm like, bring me at least 2 trays of pizza for me and my teammates. We love it. Especially I have a teammate, she's from England. She's like one of my best friends. Shout out Sean. I took her home for Easter the one week, and then we had Easter vacation. And I showed her Angela's, and she's like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had in my life. You got to keep bringing it down for us." I was like, "Of course, always."
No, I tend to agree with you. I personally
Yeah.
feel like the Old Forge pizza, or at least my experiences there, a little overhyped, overrated, but maybe
Agreed.
that's just me. What do I know? And it was interesting as you were chatting, you kind of said you found your way into field hockey, you really enjoyed the sport, knew you wanted to play in college, ended up at Villanova, and now we're at Old Dominion that way. And you mentioned about the transfer portal. And it's
Yes.
funny because I have conversations about the transfer portal with a lot of people. I found everyone seems to have an opinion on it. Some people love it because they can, go from an environment that maybe it's just not meant for them. That's not to say that the people there are bad. That's not to say that the, staff isn't doing their job or anything like that. It's just that sometimes we're not in the right environment that we need to succeed that way, and we need a change. And some people have critiqued it in the sense that they think athletes should have a long time in the same place to develop, which I mean, I see both sides to that, but I think in your case, obviously, it sounds like it was a really good thing that you were able to switch schools that way. But I'm curious to hear more about what that process from the transfer portal was like for you, because I'd imagine you made a lot of you found a lot of friends that became enemies real quick, and a lot of people didn't quite understand what you were doing and why you were doing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely. The transfer portal is definitely, I think it's tricky. When you decide that you want to go into the portal, it's a risk that you have to be willing to take. You could go into the transfer portal and you could come out on a side that you get no offers that you really are interested in, and you could end up going at a different division, which in my case, I really wanted to stay Division 1. I didn't want to go to Division 2 or Division 3 in any case. So yeah, it's a huge risk because you literally are going into the unknown when you're entering the transfer portal, and it's really risky. But if you put in the work when you're in the transfer portal, I think that it's it'll definitely be an outcome that you want to happen, and it will happen. I know I have a couple other friends that went in the transfer portal after me, like the spring after me, and they asked me like all the questions and everything, and I told them like the biggest key to being in the portal is emails. And oh my, I think I sent about 3 emails or maybe 2 emails a day to coaches. And it was like the same emails, but like it was emails to tell them like how interested I am and how I really wanted to form a connection with these coaches. And I think that's probably the biggest key to being in the transfer portal, because it's a scary environment and it's a new environment, especially for athletes who have worked so hard to get to where they want to be. And for you to think like, oh, you're not in the right place and let me take this risk and maybe I'll find better, but maybe I could end up losing everything that I've worked, 8 years of my life for in high school and everything. But scary process, but in the end, I think it works out pretty good.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point that you bring up. It makes me think of that phrase, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's green where you water it that way. So, how did you kind of go about deciding, like, yes, I definitely need to do the transfer portal that way, as opposed to try and like make the best of the current situation?
Yeah. So during my sophomore year, I was happy at Villanova. I definitely had a great group of teammates and friends that I've made along the way, but I just did not feel like I was in the right coaching environment. And plus being at in a school environment, basically. I wasn't really getting everything that I've been working for, and I felt like there could have been a harder push in the athletic environment that I was in. And if I'm working every day to win games and everything, I don't want to take any shortcuts. So I really wanted to be pushed to my best self, in my opinion. And the environment just, I really wanted a bigger school, I think. I love Philly, Philadelphia always. I love Philly. And it was close to Philly. It was only like 20 minutes away. So it wasn't bad in location, but it wasn't a campus where there was like a ton of stuff to do. And that kind of brought my mental health down a little bit. It wasn't anything bad, but I found myself in my dorm room all hours of the day unless I was going to practice and going to the cafeteria to like get food. And I found myself just sitting away, doing schoolwork, studying for hours upon hours. And it was just, I looked in the mirror and I realized like, this is not the college experience I want in any way, shape, or form. I want to enjoy my 4 years because I only have 4 years. I mean, I don't have a fifth year. I didn't redshirt my freshman, sophomore year. So I was like, why not make like the most enjoyable 4 years of my life enjoyable? And I've been through a bunch of stuff in life, and I found out at a young age that like every day is an opportunity to make something great, and why be stuck in a situation that just makes you unhappy?
Yeah,
So,
I love that point, and you can take that and apply it to anything and everything in life, whether that's sports or education or career or personal things or whatever that way. In
mhm,
general, I think life is far too short to spend
yeah,
it being in a situation where you're not enjoying what you're doing that way. And it's so interesting because I don't know you that well, Tony, but I don't picture you being the type to enjoy just sitting in your dorm room studying all the time. Like, I'm
me
sure you're an academic weapon, don't get me wrong, but I just don't picture you being the type to really want to live that kind of
yeah,
life. Like,
uh,
I feel
thank
like you probably want to enjoy life with your friends. Obviously, now you get to enjoy the beach that way. But just in general, I think most people go to college to like have a little bit of a life with a
yeah,
ton of other
exactly.
people around their own age. Like, you get to meet so many new people every single day. And
Yeah,
if you don't have the opportunities to do that, I don't think college is the same experience. And I don't think it really fully rewards you with what you're after if you don't get to, go out and make those connections. And yeah, maybe you make a few mistakes along the way. I mean, I sure as hell did, but guess what? You learn from them and you come out better on the other side. So I think that, the fact that you kind of looked at it like, hey, look, I'm here, but this is not me. This is not who I want to be. This is not what I want to be doing. Like, this just doesn't mesh and match with my personality and the way I am. I think that's a real smart way to go about it. And obviously, that's going to look a little different for everyone because some people might be a little bit more introverted and they might kind of like that quiet time. And that's great.
yeah.
Obviously, there's schools out there that really offer that and do a great job at that. But obviously,
Mhm.
it's not for everyone and certainly not for you.
Definitely not. Yeah, no, I need a little excitement in my life for sure.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the plot line has to be interesting. And if it's not good for the plot, then we probably shouldn't do it.
I couldn't agree more.
And obviously, there's a lot of different schools that you're probably going to be choosing between when you're in the transfer portal, right? Like you said, you were sending multiple emails a day to coaches that way. What went into the process of kind of deciding what school was right for you? What made you end up deciding ODU? What else did we consider that way? What were kind of the pros and cons and the thought process behind trying to figure out like what school Tony was going to end up at next?
Yeah. So, my biggest thing when I hit the transfer portal was I want to go into a new environment, but I did have to realize I was going into a new environment the middle of my sophomore year. So, every other team that I would be joining already had a million connections that were already made, already had coaches that were very close with all of the teammates and everything. And in my head, I thought I really wanted to join a team where I already had a connection, at least one connection. I thought that that was really important for an easier transition because, I mean, I already did the whole new kid on the block when I came in my freshman year to Villanova. So I already had that experience and I really didn't want to do it again, if that makes any sense. So I reached out to a bunch of schools where I did know other girls that played at these schools from high school, from club, like all that kind of stuff. And although I did reach out to, I mean, about 50 schools when I was sending out my emails, which sending out 50 school like emails a day was insane. But anyways, yeah, I made sure that I had connections already with girls on the team. So when I came looking at Old Dominion, I had four girls already on Old Dominion's team that I played travel with. And going into college, like my senior year or junior year when I committed in high school, I wanted a fresh start where I didn't know anybody. But, like I said, like middle of your college career, you want to go into an environment where you feel welcomed already and you already know it's gonna turn out good in a sense. So I played club for my entire life with about four of the girls on the team already. So it definitely like weighed my option to go to Old Dominion a lot more than the other schools where I only had like one person that I knew or where I didn't know anybody. So I think that yeah, definitely having connections with a bunch of girls already on the team and hearing about how amazing their experience has been and they've been here for well, now 5 years, definitely made it a lot easier to figure out where I wanted to end up.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. It's just kind of having that mutual connection piece. And it's interesting because this is another area where I find everyone's a little bit different, right? Like I went into a school where I knew no one there, kind of like you from the
Yeah.
start. But there's definitely some times where I was like, this would have been a lot easier if I knew someone here, anyone here, just some kind of mutual
Yeah.
connection that way. So I can certainly see why that would weigh on your mind that way a lot. And obviously the experience that they had there. If you know someone, there's this assumption that we have that we can at least trust them to a certain extent because we've got some kind of connection with them, right? And I think that when it comes to, understanding a school and what it's like and if it's a good fit for you,
Yeah.
that's the best way to do it, in my opinion. I find a lot of times, and maybe this is my biased personal experience, but I found a lot of times the tours were almost a little bit sales pitchy and
Oh
not
yeah.
an actual representation of what the school's actually like on the day to day.
Mhm.
And I find that the more we kind of like get to unravel the layers with people who are willing to just kind of say the brutal, honest truth about the place, the more you're
Yeah.
actually able to get a real clear depiction of what it's actually like there. And
Yeah.
to your point as well about just being close to the beach, right? Like obviously that's a huge perk with some of these schools like ODU or
Yeah.
earlier this week we chatted with a girl from Miami who just loves Miami because it's sunny and warm and by the beach. And it's like who wouldn't like that? But by the same token, there's people that I know who are up in like, middle of nowhere, Vermont and Colorado, where they're up in the mountains and they love to like ski and stuff like that, which like great, good for you, go off. Understanding like what kind of environment you want to be in. And I would say the other piece too is like college is only 4 to 5 years of your life the majority of the time. So if you want to just kind of trial different places and see like, hey, could I end up here like long term? Like this is your test drive. This is your trial run. Get it out of the way now before there's really any strings attached and you're locked into an area.
Exactly. And you also have to look, as much as you're like looking at it like, oh, well, this is where I'm going to be for the next couple of years. I also took a big part of like the whole field hockey environment into account when deciding to transfer. So Old Dominion is in the same conference as Villanova. This the past season, Old Dominion actually won the Big East Conference. So I knew going into my transfer, I was like, okay, like if I could go to a top school in the conference that I was in, I would love to do that too because I'm already familiar with the style of play that they've been going and like the competition that they've been going against. So I thought that that would also be like a nice smooth transaction because it's not going from Big East to Big Ten, which I mean, anything's possible. I did talk to like schools in those like conferences and everything in different conferences, but I felt like staying in the same conference, it was a good way to show that like I really wanted to be on a team that was winning, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does, and I'm really interested to see a couple weeks from now. You're going to be playing your former team, so I can't wait to see how that goes that way. I'm curious on the skill component to field hockey that way. Obviously, you're far better at the sport than I will ever be. You could probably beat me blindfolded while standing on one leg. I don't even know. I don't know how y'all do the sport of field hockey. It's just wicked impressive to watch that way. How do you feel like you kind of went about learning the sport and developing the sport and, achieving that higher skill set that's required at high level D1 that way? And what kind of things do you feel worked really well for you and set you apart versus things that maybe didn't work as well?
Yeah. I think training is the biggest thing and putting in the work that's off the clock, if that makes sense. Like doing the extra work. That's really, really important when you're trying to meet the goals of going to college and achieving the goal of playing and starting and all that kind of stuff. So when I was younger in middle school, not even middle school, oh gosh, before middle school, when I was really young, I joined, I think it was called Cacao. It was like the first indoor club that was really near our area that brought everyone together. And then as years went by, it transitioned into electric surge. And putting in the extra hours at club practices was by far the biggest thing that helped me get to where I wanted to be. And that's just because you could do extra lessons with any of the coaches that they had. And that's coming from what you like you sacrificing your time to accomplish the goals that you wanted to accomplish. And just putting in that work and training really hard and trying. I think this is really important with sports now is just being a leader on and off the field. I think that's really important and having the mentality of putting your team first, that's really going to get you a lot farther than you'd expect in reality. So yeah, definitely doing the extra training sessions and putting in the extra work with club field hockey and obviously high school field hockey, that made a huge difference in where I am today.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's interesting that you say that because that very similar takeaways came up when we chatted with Josie a few weeks back about her journey with field hockey as well. Is she, said plain and simple, you've got to put the extra work in and you can't, neglect the small, simple things that a lot of people feel like they kind of, quote unquote, progress out of, so to speak, right? Like, the best players sweat the small stuff and they do the simple things really, really well every single time. And, I don't think Steph Curry ever gets tired of taking the same practice 3-point shots over and over again, even though he's probably going to nail them every time. And I would say the same is probably true for field hockey, right? Just because you've done all this work developing your skills and dribbling and shooting and all these different things doesn't mean you can ever really pump the brakes on that and just kind of, put it on the back burner, so to speak, right? Like you've got to continue to do that and continue to develop that skill over and over and over again because you never know when that skill is really going to be, put to the test and the game could be on the line that way. And I also love how you brought up the point of just being selfless in the sense that a lot of times I think people start sport for themselves, but they finish sport because of other people that way. And I think that concept of really connecting with those around you, your teammates, your coaching staff is so important because at the end of the day, you're not just doing it for you, but you're doing it for everyone around you.
Completely agree. And yeah, I think that's like a huge lesson I learned. That's like a huge lesson I learned from, I'd have to give like all the credit to my big brother, Mark Minichello. He's a really good athlete himself. And I grew up in his shadow basically. And he taught me all the ropes of how to become the athlete that you want to be and how to become the athlete that's going to make people want to be like you, if that makes any sense. So I think, yeah, he had a lot to do with who I am today and how I've gotten to where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, plain and simple, that's what it's all about, right? It's about having some kind of lasting impact on the game. So, unfortunately, everyone has to hang up their cleats at some point. And we don't have to get into conversation about that right now. We're on a good flow right now. We don't need to get emotional yet.
Yeah.
But, there's this concept of after that happens, you could have a lasting impact on the game, right? You never know who's going to your games and who's watching you play, or, what little girl is going to pick up a stick someday because they saw you play the game that way, or, you're probably going to autograph something for, one of your fans one of these days, and it's going to like send them to the moon just because of how good they feel after getting that, right? Like you never know what kind of impact you can have on other people because you're literally doing what you're passionate about and playing the sport that you love every single day. So I think that there's something really powerful and just intangible about this concept of leaving some kind of legacy that just does not perish even after you no longer play the sport itself.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Obviously, with this whole concept of a positive sport experience, we talked about the importance of connection with teammates that way, but I might be a little biased in this, but I feel like the connection with coaching staff and personnel, I don't care what the title is, AT,
Yeah.
PT, strength coach, you name it, anyone that's involved in the team, I feel like the connection piece there has to be there. And I find a lot of the times it's not. There's disconnects and instead
Yeah.
of valuing, athletes as people, we kind of look at athletes as athletes for some reason.
Yeah.
And I don't quite understand that concept because you all do the same things as the majority of us, right? Like you still have needs, you still have things that can come up, you still have classes to attend, and life gets stressful sometimes, and you need someone to talk to and listen and hear you out about stuff. But a lot of the times we just kind of assume that doesn't happen for athletes, that you're in your own little space or your own little bubble. And I feel like the more coaching staffs and personnel and all these other, disciplines that I mentioned earlier, the more we kind of put you as the forefront and listen to you and talk to you and actually get to know you as a person, the better off your athletic experience is going to be. And I'll even go as far to say the better off you're going to play because you're around people who truly care about you instead of just, well, they just want to win the game.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. And when you're in the early stages of your recruiting, you'll hear from other people that it's like, don't commit to a college based on the coach. And I think that's so far from true. And going off of like exactly what you said, like you're committing to a university for those 4 years when at the start. I mean, obviously you could switch it up if you want, but when you're committing, you're trusting your next 4 years of life and scheduling like from those coaches that you're trusting basically your career with. You know what I mean? And I think that figuring out what type of coach you really want, and you have to ask the hard questions when you're in that recruiting process. And I think that's something I didn't do greatly. I kind of it was hard for me because it was during COVID. So I got recruited during COVID. I couldn't go on any official visits, and that was a real damper to my recruitment, I think. But what I learned from that is that you have to ask the people the real questions, girls from previous years on teams, like all that kind of stuff. Do your research about who you're going to work with. You know what I mean? And if you're in an environment where coaches, like you said, just treat you as an athlete and not as a human, you're never going to be successful. You're never going to be happy because you're not you're not getting encouraged by the people that you're supposed to be looking up to the most. And being at Old Dominion, I've felt like so much like I've been so much more valued as a player and as an individual and as a person. Like the coaches at we have three coaches on our coaching staff. We have this open door policy. Like you could go to them and talk to them about absolutely anything, and they will understand you. Whether it's about life, whether it's about field hockey, they're there for you. They're a shoulder that you could cry on. I mean, every athlete's been in a coach's office crying your eyes out over something. And I will big thank you to my coaches that I have right now that have always been supportive and positive in regards to field hockey and in regards of who I am as an individual. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's something we always love to hear and love to see that way, right? Like you need that additional support staff that way. And I'll even go a step further to say I personally feel the majority of college sports are not adequately providing for their athletes that they, literally have hundreds of them every single day. And obviously, I know things like finances and budgets and all these other things come into play, and there's a lot of considerations here. But at the same time, like if we are going to put our athletes, out on the field to represent our university or college or whatever it is that way, I personally like to know that that college is doing anything and everything they can to stand behind that athlete and support them. Because if they're going to represent the college, I want the college to also represent them. And I'm starting to see a shift where we're seeing more sports psychology and sports dietitian and more support staff in the sporting realm. But I don't think it's to the level where it's accessible to every athlete yet. And I personally feel like that's a problem because just like you mentioned earlier, you've faced some very hard times, and we don't have to get into what all of those are today. I'm not a mental health professional myself that way, but athletes face trying times in a lot of different situations. And I've had a number of athletes come to me with stuff that just makes me say, like, I have never heard of this before. I have no idea how to deal with this. And if you don't have the right people around you to help you address that, then, obviously all the on-field stuff that everyone knows you for is going to drop, but your overall quality of life and all the personal stuff is also going to be impacted. And personally, I think that's a little bit more important that we keep people right from a personal side. And I think the performance will follow as long as the personal needs are met that way. And I think that we still have some room to grow in that space.
yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that it's kind of like new in a sense that athletes have like mental issues. And it's crazy to say that because I mean it's not new. It's been happening for years upon years where athletes are struggling really hard because in reality, like we're held to a standard that we have to meet. And if we don't uphold that, like you're putting that pressure on yourself, your coaches are putting it on it, your teammates are putting on it, your families are putting it on you. And so, yeah, I think that the mental health between athletes is really important. And I'm glad that more universities are coming to terms with that, that needs to be acknowledged and that needs to be talked about. Like, we have a mental health coach. Her name's Tage. She always comes in. She's here like twice a week with us. And I mean, we get everything off our chest. She's our motivator. She's our therapist. Like, she's awesome. And she's definitely a person that you can trust. And I hope that that is a thing that all universities and all athletes and all teams start to incorporate more and more and take that 10 times more serious because it's a battle that us athletes are going through. There's a lot on our plate, and it's good that people are starting to recognize it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that the more people talk about it and discuss it and normalize, this conversation that way, the easier it's going to become and the more support is going to be offered that way. And, I could be wrong in thinking that, but that's just my personal opinion that way. Now, I realize as we're talking and recording this, we're doing this on a Thursday night. And if I remember correctly, you have a home game tomorrow during the day that way. So what is the I'm going to butcher this, Minichello
You got
pronounce
it right.
I got it. Perfect.
Yeah.
What is the Toni Minichello pre-game routine? How do we prepare for, game day that way? Is there anything we do the night before, a little carb load pasta night kind of thing? Anything that we do kind of like game day routine that way? Or how do we kind of prepare for like the big moment, so to speak?
Yeah. So actually, after this, me and a couple teammates, my mom's in right now, so we're gonna go out for like a nice big dinner. So we're gonna get those carbs up, get the protein and everything. I think that's a big key to my pregame ritual, I guess. Big meal, big healthy meal the night before for a big game, and then when the day comes around, wake up at a decent hour. You can't sleep in. I mean, sleeping in on game day, sleeping in on practice days, sleeping in any day is just not good for your body, in my opinion. You got to get up and moving. So we wake up pretty early and then we do a pre-practice like run slash walkthrough. It's not really a run, but we do a little like walkthrough kind of. And that just involves like getting our legs moving, stretching, and talking about the goals and what we want to see within ourselves during our game. So that's a really nice one. And then we have, of course, team breakfast. So that's always nice. And then we love to get amped up in the locker room. So I actually just got our team these LED lights. So we stuck those all around the locker room to get us like really pumped up before. And we just blast some music, get the energy high, and we're determined to dominate on the field. So yeah, it's
I,
nothing crazy, but
I absolutely love that. That's amazing. I guess I got to ask now, what's the pre-game hype song?
there's just so many.
Is there like a whole playlist out there? Like, is there the
We switch
Minichello
it
mix
around.
on
Honestly, we
Spotify
switch
or?
it around. Yeah, we switch around. But we have been focusing on like an artist this season with like our mental health coach. We picked out like a music artist, and that music artist is kind of guiding us with like lyrics and everything and like how we want to like continue to grow. And our artist this year is Rihanna. So Rihanna's like a big person that we like to get pumped up to, I guess.
I freaking love that. No, that's awesome. And it's nice to kind of have that, as you were talking about kind of the game day routine, you kept saying team over and over and over again. And it's like everything is done together that way. And I think that just kind of reinforces that concept of, hey, we're part of something bigger here and we're kind of doing everything for the person to the side of us just as much as ourselves that way.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really important that honestly joining this group of girls, I've never felt like I've had this big of a family before, and this group of girls has made it feel like I have 24 sisters right on my side. So yeah, being together and enjoying every little moment that we can, wins, losses, ties, all that stuff. We're always there for each other. We always have each other's back, and being together and being a literal team is just main priority to achieving greatness.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm curious, if they were gonna say something about you, what do you think they would know you as? Would you be like the most fun on the team, the most energetic, the biggest yapper? Like, what is Tony known for on the team?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty energetic. I try really hard to be a really positive voice on my team. So I feel like positive would be a good way to be remembered by if you ask my teammates.
Yeah, definitely. What's the key to that never-ending positivity that you have that way? And how is that something that you've been able to kind of develop despite facing a lot of trials and tribulations throughout your own personal life that way?
In my head, like it's not hard to be positive, and being positive, it doesn't take much effort. It's just something you have a chance to do, and doesn't cost you anything to do. So just being like in just thinking about being there for others and treating like I always grew up on the golden rule. My father would always say, treat people the way you wanted to be treated. And I know, especially in like a team setting, like treating girls with like positivity and giving them the confidence that they deserve is something that I want in return. So I think it's really easy for me to just keep going. I mean, obviously, like everyone has bad days. I have bad days too, and you lack it a little, but you just have to like tap into like your inner self and like remember that like this isn't like the end of the world if you have a bad day. It's not the end of the world if you mess up a couple times. You just got to remember like you screwed up once. All right, let's figure out a way to make it better. And I think that that's something I always look to when I'm struggling or if I see someone else struggling. I think it's really easy to just help people be positive and confident, and it doesn't take a lot of effort coming from me. So I continue to just try and continue to keep providing that guidance for like my teammates and help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that kind of light your light internally that way and never let it burn out and never let it stop shining that way. I think that's amazing that way, Tony. And obviously, I'm sure we could probably talk about how amazing you are and how great the sport of field hockey is all day long. But, I know you've got a dinner that you've got to hit up here real soon. Is there anything we missed as we were chatting today or anything else that you wanted to kind of bring up and cover?
No, I think we covered a lot of stuff. I mean, if you ever have any more questions, I'm always here. I love talking like this, and it's a great way to help other athletes that are trying to figure out the world in the transfer portal. And I'm always here for questions if anyone ever needs anything.
Yeah, definitely. You're a natural conversationalist. And for people who want to find out more about you or get in touch with you that way and kind of talk about how you were able to navigate the transfer portal successfully and all the other things that you do as a field hockey athlete, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram, which is easy to contact me at. My Instagram name, it's kind of silly, but don't judge. I haven't changed it since like, I don't know, sixth grade. It's TT Bro 2_2. You always hit me with a DM at any time. I'll answer. I love doing that kind of stuff. I'm always here to help and look forward to meeting some people that are like wanting to ask questions. Yeah.
I guess it's a good thing that no one knows my like personal handles that I had when I was in like middle school, high school
Yeah.
because oh man.
I
I don't
thought about changing it, but everyone's like, no, you have to keep it. I'm like, you
just
know what?
just
I
leave
might as
it.
well keep the
Just
secret.
leave it. Yep. I mean, I did the same thing with my Snapchat username. I'm like, it's awful, but we're just gonna leave it. It was
Keep it out
it
there.
was an era, hey, started from the bottom, now we're here. And it's a little
Exactly.
reminder of that.
Exactly.
Tony, this was amazing. I really appreciate your time and everything you shared with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Really grateful for the opportunity you've provided. So, yeah.